Have you ever noticed how peace feels different when it's chosen, not given? When a woman decides to turn her attention inward, to nurture her own growth, her silence becomes louder than any argument, and her calm becomes her greatest strength. There's something magnetic about a woman who no longer explains herself, who stops chasing validation, and simply focuses on becoming the best version of who she already is. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. And that alignment changes everything. Because when she focuses on herself, she stops pouring energy into things that drain her. She begins to see that her worth was never meant to be proven. It was meant to be lived. That realization doesn't come in noise or chaos. It arrives quietly in moments of reflection when she finally asks, "What if I stopped fighting for attention and started honoring my peace instead?" That single thought can shift an entire life. Most people fear silence because it exposes what's real. In the quiet, you can't hide behind distractions. You can't cover your wounds with words. But for a woman who's been overlooked, underestimated, or misunderstood, silence becomes sacred. It's where she learns to hear her own voice again. She realizes that silence isn't weakness, it's control. It's the art of conserving energy for what truly matters. And once she learns that, everything begins to fall into place. Not because the world suddenly becomes kind, but because she finally becomes centered. When you stop explaining yourself, people start to wonder. When you stop reacting, energy returns to you. And when you stop trying to be seen, your presence becomes undeniable. That's the paradox of inner growth. The more you let go of the need to prove, the more powerful you become. The quiet confidence of a woman who's done explaining herself carries a vibration that cannot be ignored. It commands respect, not through fear, but through clarity. In that state, she no longer measures her worth by how much she gives or how much she's loved. She measures it by how deeply she knows herself. She invests in her mind, her health, her purpose. She learns that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors to peace. And slowly, life begins to rearrange itself to match her energy. The wrong people drift away. The right ones are drawn in. Opportunities appear, not because she chases them, but because she's now aligned with who she's meant to be. This is the quiet transformation the world doesn't see. No dramatic speeches, no loud declarations, just a steady unfolding of strength, guided by stillness. She starts to realize that true confidence is not built by noise, but by knowing. And once she knows who she is, she no longer fears losing anything that disturbs her peace. That's where real power lives, in the ability to walk away from anything that doesn't grow you, without needing to explain why. So, if you've ever felt like you're fading into the background, like your silence is misunderstood, remember this: your silence is not emptiness, it's preparation. It's the space where clarity is born, where healing takes root, where strength gathers quietly before it rises. Stay there, breathe there. Because when you focus on yourself and embrace that silence, the world around you begins to shift in ways you never imagined. And everything, slowly, beautifully, falls into place. There comes a moment when silence turns from a shield into a mirror. At first, it feels uncomfortable to face yourself without distractions, without noise, without the validation of others. But soon, you begin to see something extraordinary. The woman you were before the world told you who to be. Beneath the layers of expectations, opinions, and disappointments, there she is, steady, capable, and whole. She was never lost. She was only buried under the noise of everything that wasn't meant for her. And when she finally chooses herself, piece by piece, the noise begins to fade. Focusing on yourself isn't selfish, it's self-respect. It's the decision to stop begging for peace in places that only bring chaos. It's the moment you stop asking people to see your value and start showing it through how you live. You stop waiting for someone to save you, because you realize you were never powerless. You simply forgot how powerful you truly are. And when that memory returns, it doesn't just change how you see yourself. It changes how you move through the world. You begin to protect your time, because you understand that attention is energy, and energy is life. You start saying no without guilt, yes without fear, and goodbye without resentment. You stop explaining your boundaries, because people who truly respect you don't need explanations. They feel your peace, they sense your self-control, and they know that your silence isn't distance, it's discipline. And this is where transformation deepens. The woman who once overgave, overexplained, and overthought becomes still. Her focus sharpens. She begins to move with intention, not emotion. Her calm becomes her compass. She stops reacting to every challenge and instead responds from strength. She learns to trust her intuition, that quiet, guiding voice that always knew the way, even when she doubted it. The more she listens, the more life aligns with her truth. People around her start to notice something has changed, not because she says it, but because they can feel it. Her silence speaks of peace. Her choices reflect growth. Her energy feels grounded, magnetic, unshakable. She no longer seeks approval. She radiates self-acceptance. That kind of energy draws in everything that's meant for her. Love that respects her, work that fulfills her, friendships that nourish her. Because when she changes internally, her external world adjusts to match it. There is immense psychological power in self-focus. Research shows that when your attention shifts inward, when you reflect, when you prioritize growth, your brain rewires itself toward resilience. You stop chasing short-term validation and start building long-term peace. You become emotionally self-sufficient, not because you don't need anyone, but because you've learned how to meet yourself fully. And once you do, you stop settling for anything less than real connection, real purpose, real peace. This is the quiet revolution, not loud, not desperate, but deeply grounded. You learn that true confidence isn't about being seen by others. It's about finally seeing yourself clearly. And that vision changes everything. The fears that once controlled you lose their grip. The people who once drained you lose their power. You no longer chase what's leaving because you trust that what's meant for you will always find its way. That is the peace of a woman who focuses inward, who embraces silence, and who finally realizes she doesn't have to fight for what already belongs to her. The most powerful shift happens when she realizes that peace isn't found. It's built. It's crafted from choices made quietly, day after day, when no one is watching. It's built in the moments she decides not to respond to chaos, not to justify her silence, not to chase after what drains her. Peace becomes her project, her masterpiece. And as she continues to focus inward, something remarkable happens. She no longer needs to prove that she's growing. Her presence begins to speak for her. Growth is not always visible. It doesn't always come with applause or recognition. Sometimes it looks like resting when you used to overwork. Sometimes it's walking away from arguments that once consumed you. Sometimes it's smiling at the same pain that once broke you, not because it no longer hurts, but because it no longer controls you. This is maturity in its purest form, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. And that mastery is born from silence, reflection, and self-focus. Psychologists call it emotional regulation, the ability to manage what you feel without being ruled by it. But in simpler terms, it's power, real power. Because when you learn to control your reactions, you take back the steering wheel of your life. You stop living as a reaction to others and start living from your center. That's where freedom begins. When your peace no longer depends on anyone else's behavior. When you become the calm within your own storm. And people notice. The world may not say it out loud, but it feels your transformation. The same ones who once tested your patience begin to respect your silence. The same energy that once chased chaos now attracts balance. Because life mirrors what you project. When your inner world is steady, your outer world begins to align with it. It's not magic, it's focus. It's energy. It's the quiet, consistent decision to stay grounded no matter what tries to shake you. There's deep beauty in that kind of strength. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand attention, it simply radiates presence. The woman who once questioned her worth now walks with assurance, not because she has everything figured out, but because she finally trusts the process. She's learned that not everything requires a reaction, not every situation deserves her voice, and not every connection is meant to last. And in that understanding, she finds peace deeper than words could ever describe. True silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity. It's the awareness that you don't have to rush to be understood. You don't have to fight to be seen. You just have to be aligned with your truth, and that alignment speaks louder than anything you could ever say. When she embodies that, she becomes unshakable. Her silence becomes sacred ground. Her focus becomes unstoppable momentum, and life begins to rearrange itself to match the vibration of her peace. Because that's what happens when you turn inward. The world outside adjusts to the calm you create within. What once felt impossible begins to unfold naturally. What once felt lost begins to return, not through force, not through noise, but through presence. She no longer chases outcomes. She lives in flow with them. She no longer begs for alignment. She becomes it. And in that quiet becoming, everything she once hoped for begins to find its way home. There's a unique kind of confidence that grows in silence, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. It's not loud or showy. It's steady, grounded, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. When she learns to live in that stillness, she begins to realize that her power was never about controlling others or predicting outcomes. It was always about mastering herself. The more she turns inward, the more she understands that her peace isn't a reward for surviving chaos. It's the foundation for creating everything that comes next. The woman who focuses on herself stops asking, "What do they think of me?" and begins to ask, "What do I think of me?" That single shift changes everything. Because when you stop living for external approval, you stop betraying your own truth. You no longer twist yourself to fit someone else's comfort. You no longer shrink to be accepted. You rise quietly, and the world starts to see you differently, not because you sought attention, but because you finally aligned with your essence. That alignment radiates. It speaks in every decision, every boundary, every silence that says, "I choose me." Focus is power. Whatever you give your attention to grows. When your focus was scattered on others, on opinions, on disappointments, on what they said or didn't say, your energy fragmented. But when you pull that energy back into yourself, something sacred happens. Your life becomes coherent. You begin to move as one whole being again. Focused, present, intentional. You stop surviving and start creating. The same energy that once fed worry now feeds wisdom. The same heart that once chased love now attracts it effortlessly. This shift is not loud, but it's seismic. It changes how she walks, how she speaks, how she breathes. Her silence is no longer the absence of words, it's the presence of peace. It carries a message that only self-mastery can write. I am enough as I am. And that message transforms her relationships, her goals, and her destiny. Because people respond differently to a woman who knows her worth. Life responds differently to someone who finally respects their own energy. Psychologically, this is the power of focus and self-regulation. The brain begins to rewire itself for calm, clarity, and purpose. The body follows, shedding old tension and habits that once came from fear and overthinking. Emotionally, she becomes lighter. Spiritually, she becomes magnetic. When she stops seeking, she starts attracting. When she stops rushing, she starts receiving. The law of life is simple. Whatever you embody, you draw in. And when she embodies peace, strength, and self-trust, the universe mirrors it back. This is why silence is not a void. It's a signal. It tells the world that she's no longer available for chaos. It tells her mind that it's safe to rest. It tells her heart that it's okay to heal. And in that calm, the next version of her begins to emerge. The one who no longer reacts out of pain, but responds from wisdom. The one who no longer chases closure, because she realizes that peace was never something others could give her. It was something she had to claim. Everything begins to make sense in this space of focus and quiet. The things she once fought for start coming naturally. The people she once tried to convince begin to understand without words. The opportunities that once passed her by start finding their way back. Because when a woman centers herself, the world rearranges to meet her there, right where her silence meets her strength. There is a certain beauty in the moment she stops fighting for control and simply allows life to unfold. It's not about giving up, it's about surrendering to alignment. She realizes that forcing outcomes only creates resistance, and resistance breeds exhaustion. But when she lets go, truly lets go, she discovers that peace has been waiting for her all along. Letting go doesn't mean she no longer cares. It means she finally trusts. She trusts her timing, her path, and her power. And in that trust, she becomes unstoppable. When a woman focuses on herself and stays silent, she begins to hear what her soul has been whispering all along. It's the voice that says, "You were never behind. You were always becoming." Those words carry weight. They free her from comparison, from the illusion that she must rush, compete, or prove her worth. Growth doesn't demand an audience. Healing doesn't need validation. The most profound transformations happen in private, in the stillness where the mind quiets and the heart speaks. That's where she rebuilds herself from the inside out. In psychology, this is called internal grounding. The moment your identity shifts from being externally driven to internally centered, you no longer react to the opinions around you, you respond to the truth within you. This shift is powerful because it rewires how you see yourself. Instead of chasing significance, you embody it. Instead of begging to be chosen, you realize you already are, by yourself. That awareness creates emotional independence. It's the foundation of unshakable confidence. And once that foundation is set, the world begins to respond differently. Opportunities appear where doors once closed. Relationships deepen or fall away depending on whether they align with your peace. Nothing needs to be forced anymore. Life begins to flow with you, not against you. That's the magic of alignment. It's not about controlling the current, it's about moving with it. She no longer fears the unknown because she's learned to find stillness in uncertainty. She trusts that what's meant for her won't miss her. That kind of peace cannot be faked. It's lived, felt, and radiated. People often misunderstand silence as weakness. But silence is intelligence. It's the refusal to argue with noise. It's knowing that not everything deserves your attention, and not everyone deserves access to your energy. The woman who learns this saves her power for what matters most. She stops leaking energy through unnecessary words and unhealed battles. She reclaims it, redirects it, and reinvests it into herself. That's how she grows, not by doing more, but by aligning deeper. Her energy becomes rare, and rare energy always attracts what's real. She begins to see that she doesn't need to chase what resonates with her soul. It finds her effortlessly because she's no longer fragmented, she's whole. That wholeness changes her aura. It changes her rhythm. It changes how life responds to her, because everything around her becomes a reflection of what she believes she deserves. And when she finally believes she's worthy of peace, the world mirrors it back in ways she could never have imagined. In that stillness, she begins to smile, not because everything is perfect, but because she no longer needs it to be. She's learned the greatest truth of all. Peace isn't the absence of storms, it's the strength to stand calm within them. And when she masters that, when her silence becomes her power, life finally begins to fall gracefully, effortlessly into place. When she reaches that quiet place within herself, she begins to understand that everything she was searching for outside was already within her. The validation, the love, the sense of belonging, it was all waiting for her to return home to herself. That realization doesn't come as a loud revelation. It comes softly, like a gentle awakening. It's the moment she recognizes that peace is not found in people or possessions, but in presence. The more she learns to be fully here, fully aware, fully still, the more life begins to show her that she has always been enough. The silence she once feared becomes her greatest companion. It's where she meets her truth without filters. It's where she remembers her strength without needing proof. Silence teaches her to listen, not just to the world, but to her intuition. That inner compass that always knew the way. Every time she honors that voice, she deepens her connection with herself. And the stronger that connection becomes, the less she depends on anything outside of her for stability. She moves from seeking security to creating it within. That's the essence of inner freedom, not being untouched by life, but being unmoved by chaos. This kind of peace doesn't come from comfort, it comes from courage. The courage to face your shadows, to let go of control, to choose healing over reaction. Psychology calls it self-integration. The moment you stop rejecting parts of yourself and start embracing all that you are. the strong, the soft, the broken, the becoming. You stop apologizing for your growth even when it makes others uncomfortable. You stop editing your truth to be accepted by those still afraid of theirs. That acceptance of self becomes the foundation of authenticity, and authenticity is magnetic. When a woman stands fully in who she is, she no longer attracts what feeds her insecurities. She attracts what feeds her soul. People who match her peace, not her pain. Experiences that expand her, not drain her. She no longer chases love. She allows it to meet her where she stands. Because now she radiates it. Her silence becomes her language of power. Her focus becomes her declaration of self-worth. Without saying a word, she communicates, I know who I am, and I know what I deserve. And the universe always answers certainty with alignment. She begins to realize that she doesn't need to fight to be seen. She just needs to stay true. Every time she chooses peace over proving, clarity over confusion, self-respect over comfort, she strengthens her alignment with her higher self. That alignment becomes her compass through every decision. It keeps her grounded when others try to shake her, patient when life tests her, and graceful even in moments of uncertainty. She learns that peace is not passive. It's power under control. It's strength in stillness. It's mastery without noise. From that place, life no longer feels like a battle to win, but a journey to understand. She starts to see meaning in the pauses, lessons in the setbacks, blessings in the waiting. The silence that once felt empty now feels full of clarity, wisdom, and direction. She realizes she never needed to chase what was already destined for her. All she ever needed was to slow down enough to receive it. Because when she focuses on herself and stays silent, she doesn't lose anything, she gains everything. And the woman she becomes in that stillness is not just peaceful, she's powerful beyond measure. The more she lives in that state of inner calm, the more she begins to see how everything around her starts to reflect her new energy. The situations that once triggered her no longer hold the same power. The conversations that once drained her no longer matter. The relationships that were built on her silence for the sake of others begin to fall away. Not because she's cold, but because she's evolved. She no longer fights to be understood. She simply chooses peace over explanation. And in that quiet detachment, her world begins to shift from chaos to clarity. Every choice she makes now flows from alignment, not approval. She no longer asks, will they like me? But instead asks, does this bring me peace? That simple shift transforms everything. Because when peace becomes the measure, confusion fades. When intention replaces reaction, growth becomes inevitable. This is the psychology of emotional maturity, the point where you stop being driven by impulse and start being guided by awareness. It's not that life stops challenging her, it's that she no longer meets those challenges from a place of fear. She meets them from strength, from self-trust, from stillness. That stillness becomes her sanctuary. It's where she rebuilds her energy after the world tries to take from it. It's where she recenters herself after disappointment. It's where she reminds herself that every ending was simply making space for something purer to enter. The woman who learns to pause before reacting gains power that cannot be measured. Because in the pause, she remembers her worth. She remembers her control. She remembers that not everything deserves her response, and that silence can sometimes speak more truth than words ever could. Her silence becomes a mirror, reflecting her strength back to her. It tells her that she no longer needs to fight for closure, because her peace is no longer dependent on someone else's apology. It tells her that forgiveness is freedom, not permission to be hurt again. It tells her that boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to self-respect. Each lesson builds upon the last until she realizes she no longer lives for survival. She lives for balance. And in that balance, she becomes untouchable. Psychologically, this is emotional independence at its highest form. It's when your happiness is no longer borrowed from circumstances or people. It's created from within, intentionally, consistently. She's no longer chasing external validation to feel complete. She's building internal fulfillment that cannot be taken. This is the point where her energy stops fluctuating based on how others treat her. It stabilizes, it solidifies, it shines quietly, unbothered and free. And the beauty of this transformation is that it's not loud. No one may even notice when it happens, but she feels it in her breath, in her thoughts, in the way her heart no longer races to fix what isn't hers to fix. She feels it in her peace that stays steady even when the world wobbles. She feels it in her smile that no longer hides pain but radiates assurance. This is what it means to master yourself, not by dominating life, but by flowing with it, gracefully, intentionally, silently. Because true power never announces itself. It simply exists, calm and unwavering. And the woman who learns to live in that energy becomes a force of nature, not by effort, but by essence. She doesn't chase what's meant for her. She attracts it through her stillness. She doesn't shout her worth. She embodies it through her peace. That is the quiet revolution of a woman who focuses on herself and stays silent. The revolution that changes everything without making a sound. There comes a time when her silence no longer feels like restraint but liberation. It's the moment she realizes that staying silent isn't about withholding words. It's about protecting energy. She doesn't need to defend her peace to anyone. She doesn't need to explain the standards she's built from her pain. Every boundary she holds, every pause she chooses, every no she speaks softly but firmly, all of it becomes an act of self-love. It's in this sacred discipline that her spirit finds rest. She's not hiding from the world anymore. She's harmonizing with herself. The woman who once felt misunderstood now walks with quiet certainty. She no longer needs to be loud to be heard because her presence speaks volumes. There's a different kind of confidence that blooms in her, not born from praise, but from peace. It's the confidence of someone who no longer fears solitude because she's learned how to be at home within her own soul. She understands now that solitude isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's where she reconnects with her purpose, her dreams, and the sound of her own heartbeat that once got lost in the noise of pleasing others. Psychologically, this is the stage of self-actualization, when your focus turns from survival to creation. She's not reacting to life anymore, she's designing it. Every thought becomes intentional, every decision aligned with her peace. Her silence isn't the absence of motion, it's the presence of mastery. It's where she filters what deserves her energy and what doesn't. This awareness rewires her mind to choose calm over chaos, depth over distraction, meaning over noise. And the more she practices it, the more natural it becomes. People begin to sense this change even if they can't explain it. Her silence carries a gravity that words cannot replicate. It's the calmness of someone who has faced storms and realized that not every thunder demands attention. It's the composure of someone who has learned to protect her peace like it's sacred, because it is. She's no longer the woman who explains her boundaries out of fear of losing someone. She's the woman who keeps her peace because losing herself is no longer an option. This transformation is not about isolation, it's about elevation. She rises above the noise by grounding herself in truth. She realizes that the power of silence isn't withdrawal, it's wisdom. It's choosing not to participate in anything that lowers her vibration. It's choosing to respond from love, not from ego. It's choosing to observe without absorbing. And when she masters that, she becomes untouchable. Not because she's unreachable, but because she's balanced. Her energy shifts from seeking to knowing. She no longer asks, when will things fall into place? Because she finally sees that they already are. Every delay, every detour, every loss was a redirection toward her alignment. She trusts the process completely now, not because she knows what's next, but because she knows herself. And that knowing is enough. It's the unshakable peace that comes when you've looked within and found everything you were looking for. This is what it means when she focuses on herself and stays silent. Not withdrawal, not pride, but evolution. She's learned that true power is quiet. True peace doesn't shout. And when she moves with that kind of still strength, the universe listens. Everything begins to organize around her energy, perfectly, effortlessly, inevitably. Because when a woman becomes the calm within her own life, everything around her falls beautifully into place.